Fitz the Bill here on 1061 ESPN Richmond. I'm Jack Fitzpatrick, joined now Timothy Jean-Pierre, head football coach for Hermitage, as they're getting set for a showdown with Highland Springs Friday, an odd 2:30 p.m. kick. We'll get into that in a little bit. But, Coach, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to chat with us.
No, not a problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I want to start here, 28-25. We were over at the Verina-Dinwiddie game, right? And the power of social media, it's a wonderful thing. We are following along with the game that you guys were having. And it seemed like it was a edge of your seat, back and forth showdown. I want to get the perspective from the sideline from you.
It was definitely an edge of your seat game, especially for people that's watching it, from a coaching standpoint. There was some things that we did that allowed those guys. First off, they're a good team. Hats off to those guys. But we had some opportunities to kind of get the edge, get the momentum, and kind of, I don't want to say necessarily run away with the game, but create some space to where, it wasn't as much pressure at the end of the game, which essentially what happened. The way to end the first half, they scored on the last play in the first half. The quarterback went out, and we had a defensive set that we felt, could match what they had going on, considering the quarterback was out, and the backup threw a bomb, and kind of caught us in a defense that, we felt good about. But however, situationally, we might have should have did something different. But ultimately, that kind of led to, them getting the ball coming out second half. So now obviously it turns into a defensive game. And they did a pretty good job, mixing up some things. And then, ultimately it was a game of situations. And we got to the end where, the game kind of was almost sealed for those guys. But, we got a turnover first and 10. And it put us in a great situation to kind of capitalize, and that's what we did. We kind of capitalized, we scored, and just had to play some decent defense to not allow those guys to drive the field. But I think at that point, most of their timeouts were gone. We got a chance to finish the game, on defense, and then get into victory formation on offense.
That's awesome. And you guys, with the 5 next to your name, you've been on the road for this whole playoff so far. You're going to be on a road again this Friday, but you guys have kind of made a lot of noise on the road. I remember we were out at the Glen Allen game earlier this year. It was an impressive win against Glen Allen for you all on the road. What is it about this team that kind of lends itself to maybe being a little bit of that road warrior type?
Well, I think, this year especially, right? It's about culture. Those harder games are on the road. And I feel like, Hermitage has a historic program, right? And it's my job to take it back to where it was and beyond, obviously, right? So I think the guys have a chip on their shoulder, understanding what's at stake, not only for the program, but for the season, for our seniors, and just for the experiences that we've had leading up to this point. So, I think our guys have, definitely matured throughout the process. That's the question I ask often. Like, are we mature enough to take the next step? Because talent is never the issue, has never been the issue. Culture, mindset, and brotherhood. How the guys band together has been the main focus as we have moved forward this year. So I think us being on the road, it just kind of fits the mindset of our approach to the season. Hearn versus everybody, because we know what we have. We know the letdowns we've had in the past. Some of those letdowns lead to the doubts on the outside, but we could care less about how people feel on the outside. We know what it is that we got to do. And I think just being on the road kind of helps us just keep the chip on our shoulder. And because we're better with a chip on our shoulder.
And now this week, a little bit of an interesting week. Not only is it Thanksgiving thrown in there on Thursday, so the school schedule is a little bit different, but you're kicking off on Friday, 2:30 p.m., Black Friday. It'll be a different atmosphere at Highland Springs. How are you preparing and getting your team prepped in what is a very important week, but a very different type of week?
Well, essentially, we both get the same amount of times to practice, unless their principals letting those guys leave school early, right? So it's no advantages to it or disadvantages, man. Look, we're going to play football whenever it's scheduled. You schedule at 9 in the morning, 12 at night. Interesting enough, our red and blue scrimmage, we scrimmaged at 12 midnight. We did a sleep in. We scrimmaged from 12 to 2 in the morning. And it was some pretty good football. So I think no matter what the time is, our guys are going to be ready to play football. We may have an earlier practice on Wednesday, kind of calibrate around the time as much as possible. But at the end of the day, one practice shift in time doesn't really dictate what we're going to do and how we're going to play football. We will have an early morning practice on Thursday. On Thursday, obviously it's Thanksgiving, but you know, um, life is about adjustments, and that's why I love football so much because it's about adjusting and adjustments, and our guys know that. So, our guys will be ready to play. We won't be eating a big meal that early in the day, right? It's a little different how we do our pregame meal, but ultimately, preparing for a game is preparing for a game, and whatever the time is, we'll take it, and we'll be ready to go. So we're excited about the game. 2:30, 1:30, 4:30, 6:30, 9:30. It don't matter to us. We're excited that we got the time ahead, a week ahead of time, right, and not the last minute. But it shouldn't affect us at all. So we're not thinking about it.
And this is a Highland Springs team that you guys faced off against just a couple of weeks, or I guess now a month ago, just about. It was
Yeah.
at your place. It was a 3-point loss. What learnings can you take away from that game that gets you prepared for this playoff showdown?
Field position number one. We gave those guys the ball on the 40, the 50, probably consistently throughout the game. So even if we was in, third, fourth down situations, it wasn't a situation for them to punt. So field position is number one, obviously. You got to tackle, no matter who the running back is, whether it's zero. I see they got a guy number 22 back there. He's a little different speed of running back that they got in the backfield, but tackle, and obviously we got to rally number two. Not allow them to move the chains on third down, not allow them to throw those deep balls. And obviously prevent number one from catching them. Number four is a decent player as well, and number eight can cause you some issues on special teams. And number 11 on defense, man, he's a force. So, the 54 center, he's a great, probably their best lineman. And they pull him often, especially on the quarterback power. But they got some guys that that can make the game very interesting. And it'll be our job, obviously, to scheme a way to prevent those guys from making plays, and our players' job to ultimately stop those guys. Compete well, compete hard, play hard football, and dominate.
I look forward to it, Coach. Appreciate your time on this Monday. Good luck for the rest of the week. Have a happy Thanksgiving and a good luck on Friday afternoon against Highland Springs.
Man, yes, sir. Thank you for having us on there. Go Herm, roll pride.